What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Trucker 219. So I enjoy doing these deep dive videos on these different companies to give you guys more information about the company. However, it does take a little bit of time for me to get these done. I have a nice long list of companies that I plan on getting to, with over 20 companies on that list and growing every day. But in this video, I'm going to give you the same questions that I asked the recruiter. So if you're on a time crunch in order to try to get a job, that you'll be able to ask the recruiters the same questions I do. This way you can make the most informed decision for your needs. So let's go. So the first thing that I want to look for in a company is if they offer CDL training. Now this could be different based off of what you're looking for. You might want to go to a private institution and get your CDL, or you might want to go for a company, but it's good to know whether or not a company does offer that. And with that, you also want to know what that entails. Is it a 2-week course? Is it a 3-week course? Is it a 2-month course? Now, if you are doing their CDL training, most companies will require you to have some sort of contract or agreement to stick with them for a certain amount of time. So this means you need to find out what that contract is. Are you going to have to stay with them for 9 months, a year? And what happens if you decide to leave early? Another good question to ask underneath that umbrella is if there's any pay while you're going through CDL training, if they provide lodging and food while you're there, and also what kind of transportation they provide to get you to their terminal. Now, some of you guys might not be looking for CDL training. Some of you guys might go to a private institution to get your CDL. So the second question you should be asking is, what is training like for somebody who's recently got their CDL or getting ready to get their CDL? Now, each company is completely different on their training process for those who already have their CDL. Some require a certain mileage with a trainer, and others require a certain amount of time with a trainer. And while you're in this training, you'll want to know how much money you'll be paid during that time. And also underneath that umbrella, you need to ask the question, do you guys offer tuition reimbursement? And again, every company is different. Some companies will only offer $1,500 worth of tuition reimbursement. Other companies will offer $6,000 worth of tuition reimbursement that's dispersed in a monthly increment. And trust me, if you've racked up the bills going through CDL school, anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 to go through CDL school, you'll want some sort of help to pay for that. And a lot of these major companies do that. All right, so we got the training questions out of the way. The next thing you need to ask is, what is the pay when I go solo? Meaning, after you're done with training, what is the pay when you become a solo driver and start driving your truck down the road? There's a bunch of different pay formats depending on what company you go with. Some pay cents per mile, some pay percentage, some pay based off of the load, and it's important to know how you're paid. But I'll tell you, as a general rule, most companies either pay cents per mile or percentage of the load. And you really want to press for these numbers, and here's the reason why. If you don't press for a specific cents per mile or percentage rate, a lot of companies will try to give you an average weekly or yearly pay. Well, unfortunately, truckers aren't paid at a weekly rate or a yearly rate, so these numbers are oftentimes a lot of fluff. Which leads me to the next question that you definitely want to ask. On average, how many miles am I going to be getting a week? Now, it's really hard to nail down a perfect number of exactly how many miles you're going to get per week. There's so many factors that contribute to that number, including times at docks, breakdowns, traffic, and just the loads in general. But if you can get a rough estimate from them, you'll be able to calculate how much you'll make per week and per year. For example, let's say a company is going to pay you 45 cents per mile, and on average, you're making about 2,500 miles a week. You would take 2,500 miles a week and multiply it by 45 cents per mile. And that's going to give you your pay before taxes. And then if you just multiply that by about 50 weeks a year, you're going to go home a couple of weeks for holidays and stuff. But 50 is a good estimate. You're looking at $56,000 a year. Also, before taxes, you're not taking home $56,000 a year. But the easiest way I could tell you to figure out how much your taxes is going to be is to multiply it by 20% or 0.2. Then you subtract that number from the total number. 1125 minus 225 puts you at $900 for the week, and that's in your pocket. So make sure you're taking the extra time to do these calculations and not just taking them for their word on their average weekly and yearly salary, because that's just not how truckers are paid. Now, another great question to ask is, outside of mileage, what else would I be paid for? And specifically, you're looking for layover, detention, and if you're doing flatbed, you want to ask about tarp fees. The next question you need to ask is, how much home time will I get if I go to work for you guys? And again, you're going to get different answers from you're home every weekend to you're out for 2 weeks, home for 2 days. But as a general rule across the industry, it's 1 day home per week out. So that means if you go out for 3 weeks, you're going to be home for a 3-day weekend. Now, if you're wanting to stay out on the road even longer than that, most companies don't have an issue with it. I've stayed out for up to 2 months at a time before and then just gone home for the weekend and done it again. And actually, as a new driver, especially within your first year, I recommend staying out as long as you can. A lot of drivers come into the industry thinking that they're going to be home every night or home every weekend, but it's really hard to make a decent amount of money if you're going home all the time. Because the truth of trucking is if your truck isn't moving, you're not making money. A couple other minor questions that you might want to ask the recruiter is A, if the trucks are governed, and B, if they have cameras in the trucks, and C, what kind of equipment do they run. Now, I will tell you most of the major carriers do have cameras and they are governed. And some new drivers just want to drive that shiny Peterbilt or Kenworth, so those questions might be important to you. And that's it. Those are the questions that I ask the recruiters pretty much every time I call for a deep dive. So if I haven't yet done a deep dive on a company that you're interested in, use these questions to find out the most amount of information from the recruiters as you can before you go and sign on. And if you didn't get a pen and a paper out, I'm going to go ahead and write these questions down in the description below for you to be able to use when you're calling the recruiters. If there's any other questions that are burning and very important to you, leave those in the comments below and I might add them to my deep dives. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. All right? Bye.